Can I get through? Thank you.
She's in the booth right now. She had some minor hip surgery. That's what her follow-up is. So she's doing good. And it was nothing else. Just years ago.
All right, I'd like to bring to order the meeting of St. Helena City Council, Tuesday, March the 12th, 2019. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. McKelly, would you lead us, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now move on to the roll call.
Councilmember Shuto,
Here.
Councilmember Knudsen,
Present.
Councilmember Koberstein,
Here.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Here.
and Mayor Ellsworth.
Here. We'll now move into the public forum, and this is where members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern not on the agenda during public forum. Each person's comments shall be limited to 4 minutes. Each person is entitled to speak on any non-agendized item only once at any meeting. Brief questions by council members for clarifications may be posed and answered, and council members may make requests that items be placed on future agendas, but in accordance with state law, no substantive discussion or action may take place unless and until the matter properly appears on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Please.
I'm Ann Carr, 1730 Dean York Lane, St. Helena. And I'm here to just give you a brief report on our RV to Paradise project. To date, we have donated to us a fifth wheel that sleeps 8. We have the money to purchase a trailer for a couple or a family with 2 small children. We have donated a pickup truck, and we have also donated to us a minivan. We have about $2,500 left over, hoping for enough more at the end of our drive, which officially ends on the 15th, to possibly purchase yet another vehicle. I want to give a big shout out to our team, which has been absolutely exceptional. Thanks to Mark and to Cindy, who's not here, for putting the blast on the website. I think that's going to be a big help in our last push. Thanks to Jesse and the Star for wonderful publicity. And thanks to the Federated Women who've been our partners in this. Without them, we couldn't have done it. They have given us the use of their 501c3 and their website. And thanks to you all for your support of the project. And thanks to our community. I'm sorry. What a great place we live. Glenn and I, my husband and I, were in Paradise over the weekend, and if you haven't been there, it's indescribable. We spoke with the mayor, who was cleaning her property, and she told us every single member of the city council had lost their home. And she said, you know, in a way it's a blessing because we can be understanding and helpful to everybody else. There's nothing left. There's nothing left. There are no stores. There's no hospital. There's hardly any churches. It's just unbelievable. And I think people are feeling forgotten. We're working with the Jewish Center in Chico, and they are, excuse me, are kind of boots on the ground to connect with the folks who will receive the donations. So we'll keep you posted. And as this goes along, I expect we will probably deliver the vehicles about the middle of April. So I'm hoping that we can just push it over the line here, but thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, Mary.
And I know I read when somebody else did this, when they actually took the vehicles over there, then they packed them up with things like sheets and towels. And do you have a plan to do that?
These vehicles that we're taking, both RVs are fully loaded. Everything, dishes,
okay.
Sheets, everything.
Okay.
Yeah, people have been incredibly generous.
Okay.
Yeah. So thanks to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any further public comment? Please queue up at the podium, please.
I'm Anthony McKellar, 1125 Cornella. I just have a question. I was at the Planning Commission meeting last Tuesday, and they made changes in the agreement or whatever the city did the week before of allowing 2 council people to look at the water rates. And they had said it was coming back at this meeting, but I don't see it on the agenda or their comments that they made in a resolution back to you. Is it not coming back to you? I think Noah was at the meeting.
That item will be brought back before the council. You'll recall that the ordinance making changes to the water rate review was broken into 2 parts. One required zoning code modifications, so that portion went to the planning commission, and staff has just not been able to modify or implement those recommendations from the commission and get it onto the council's agenda. Obviously, in 1 week, we don't always have that turnaround time, and so it will be on a future council agenda, and I don't know that we have a date identified, but it will be at the next available one that staff can put the item on.
Thank you.
Good evening. Skip Lane, 18 Redondo Court in St. Helena, appearing tonight on behalf of the St. Helena Historical Society. As you probably know, the Historical Society has for a long time been looking for an appropriate space to display its collection and to interact with the public. The city is currently in the process of evaluating the properties which it owns and deciding on the functionality of those properties for the foreseeable future. Before any final decisions are made, the Historical Society would like an opportunity to make a presentation to you regarding our space needs. And in that regard, we ask to be placed on an upcoming council agenda so that this matter might be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jeff Blum, 899 Sanitarium up in Deer Park, and I am here on behalf of St. Helena Little League. I am the president of Little League and a 5-year board member. We have occupied the fields at Crane Park since, I think, 1969, and over the last few years have seen some pretty serious deterioration in the field conditions out there. There's a big drainage problem which has really taken its toll on the asphalt surrounding the grandstands and so forth. If you were to walk out there, I brought photos of it. We have cleaned it up. Our opening day is this Saturday. And we are, thank you. We are about to begin, I think we're close to 50 years, 48 years, I think, since we've been playing Little League out here in St. Helena. So as a league, we are looking for your support in a fundraising project that we will initiate in order to build to correct this drainage problem out here, which is causing the big mess. And then we want to propose a new snack shack, which will also include restrooms. The facility out there, the nearest restrooms out there are at the bocce courts and at the skateboard park. Both of those are on septic. We would propose that we will run this to the city sewer. The city has the opportunity to tie in the 2 restrooms out there into that. You may notice the baseball diamond that is in front of the snack shack. That's our fundraising proposal. Bricks that we would sell to family members, grandparents, people that are in the community, in the shape of a baseball diamond with the 4 big bases there for our big donors. And through some feelers, we already have a couple people that have offered to match whatever we raise with the bricks. So we feel confident as a league that we can raise most, if not all, the funds needed to do the work. We do have a quote for everything with the exception of the field drainage. You can look through that. I think there's a lot of ways to save money in there. We could do some in-kind work with local plumbers and electricians and of that sort. And then, but I do think we, like I said, as a league, we feel like we can raise these funds ourselves. That's about it, I think, for what I have. I think some of you I've talked to about this project, so if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Are there any initial questions from council? We can't discuss anything at length, but my thought is to agendize this soon. If you're moving into a fundraising, and my understanding is that you'll be able to do the fundraising yourself. Right. But looking for council support of the project, and we would have to interface with some of the infrastructure.
Sure.
So I would like to see if we could agendize that at a near meeting.
Great,
for
sounds
support.
good. Do you want a
Yeah.
second person?
And
If you don't mind, I would like to add that we have employed a local engineering firm, Madrone Engineering, to help us with the drainage issues and also get the building permits through the city process, as well as Carlo DeFidi, local architect, to design the building and things of that nature. So taken some steps and put some finances behind it already.
And this is something we could put together a resolution if we agreed at a discussion? Okay.
All right, thank you for your time.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Further public comment?
Hi there. I'm Elaine DeMann, 1113 Childs Avenue. I have, are you ready? My pictures, I'm just kind of getting tech savvy with how to bring photos to show, so you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. What I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight was the Tree and Watershed Protection Ordinance that the county is considering. And first of all, thank you for going after the 500-foot buffer. But you might like to see what that actually looks like. Next slide, please. So that's what you get with 500 feet. Now, that's assuming they grant it. I believe when the supervisors sent it down to planning, it was only going to be 200 feet, and I guess you guys wrote and wanted the 500 foot. So that's what 500 feet looks like. And in addition to that, the next slide, there are going to be some protections on the creek itself. And it's looking like it's going to be 35 feet on either side. And that drawing there is not to scale. I couldn't quite make that work, but I just wanted to show you, what the creek looked like. And you will get some protections there. Whether that are enough or not, I don't know. And then the next slide, please. And this is kind of the key thing. That green area, that's area that you already own or control. So that 500-foot buffer is really not giving you much that you don't already have and have control over. So the next slide, please. And I just wanted you to see what the reservoir looks like in the context of the entire watershed. So it's that little, pool down there, bottom left of the pink area. So that entire area is what drains into the creek, which ultimately drains into the reservoir. So there's still lots of vulnerability, but there is some good news. If the next slide, please. There are some areas that are already protected. There are those dark green areas, and there's actually quite a bit more to the northern end. I just ran out of time to put all of the plots in for the Dunn Wild Lake Preserve, but that lower green square, that's the Audubon Cheney Preserve. There's about 4 piece parcels that are owned by the hospital for their water supply, so I think you can count on those kind of being safe. But really, the really big savior for us is all that green area, and there's even more of it going north, and we have Randy Dunn to thank for that, and the Napa County Land Trust. And the next slide shows the 3 projects that are currently pending. Now, somehow that Frost Fire 2 kind of slipped in there in the middle of the Wild Lake Preserve, and that one, they applied for a timber harvest permit with the state, and they were granted it, but it's kind of stalled right now because the Center for Biological Diversity has a lawsuit against the CAL FIRE for approving that one. And then the Heiser West Lane, that's the one I talked about the last time I was here, and Erica wrote a fabulous letter talking about all the vulnerabilities we have. And then Viator Vineyards, they're proposing another vineyard in their area, in their property. And I'm not sure why that didn't come up for public comment or anything. It might be because it's less than 5 acres. I have about 2 more slides, can I?
I think, can we do the other two at the next meeting? I just think we need to stick to, you, okay, if you want to finish up.
Yeah, I can. The next slide just kind of shows the gray areas. I put an aerial photo over it, and I just kind of mapped out all the existing vineyards that are in the watershed. And of course, in Angwin, there's additional housing and other things going on. And then the last slide shows you where our major vulnerabilities are right now. Those two, there's actually like 6 parcels represented there, but they're owned by older people who've had them for a really long time, and there's a good chance that they're going to get sold for probably for vineyard development or some other kind of development in the near future. So right now, that's looking like the biggest vulnerability in the watershed.
Thank you.
Oh, and that doesn't take into account PG&E and all the tree clearing they're doing, which we should map into this also.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you for presenting that.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, I will move to our consent items, or I will move to, to reports by staff and city council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. I'm going to work from Mr. Brown forward regarding our closed session.
The City Council met in closed session this afternoon to discuss the single item designated on the agenda for the closed session, whether to initiate litigation. There was no reportable action or direction to initiate litigation.
Thank you. Mr. Presswich, the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. One, want to acknowledge and thank Zinnia Gamero for clerking tonight. Appreciate that very much. And then secondly, after 2 weeks ago, after our meeting, the staff discovered a sewer leak at City Hall that resulted in a sewer overflow occupying a portion of our building. And I want to thank the staff for their patience as well as the community for their patience. We were closed for 3 days, and then we partially reopened last week. The remediation and reconstruction of a portion of the building was finished yesterday, and we're back in business. That's all.
Thank you. Our finance director, April Mitz.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I wanted to provide a brief update on our budget schedule for this year. It was scheduled at the next meeting that we are going to review the long-range financial forecast and also the fiscal health diagnostic. Due to the said sewer overflow in City Hall, we're a little behind schedule, so we're hoping to take that the first meeting in April for you.
Thank you. Is there a report from the acting city clerk, Zinnia Gamero?
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Thank you. Our planning director.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth and Council. Just wanted to briefly announce to the public, as many of you are aware, LAFCO's, the Local Agency Formation Commission, is undertaking to update their sphere of influence policy, and that is open for public comment right now. So anyone in the public who's interested, I would encourage them to log on to their website and look at their draft policy and provide comments. And staff does intend to bring back a letter and some comments for the City Council to review and provide direction on, ultimately to provide to LAFCO. On a different note, staff would like to announce that the General Plan Draft 2040 update and the EIR were published today for public review prior to presenting those items to the Planning Commission 1 week from today on the 19th. So just so that item's out and up, and I'd encourage folks to take a look and read those and show up to the Planning Commission and provide your input.
And what is the window on the LAFCO comments?
I don't have an exact date. I think City Manager Presswich may know.
They indicated they would provide about 40 days. So we're anticipating we will be able to bring you back a draft with some seeking policy direction at our next meeting, with a possibility that I think we reserve one more meeting for a final review.
Thank you. Our Public Works Director, Erica Smithies.
No reports this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Knudsen?
No reports this meeting.
Ms. Chateau?
No, just note that I was at the LAFCO meeting with the city manager. We had a workshop on Monday that we got to attend to learn more about it. Also, I went to a meeting with the school superintendent and parents, and we talked about the school resource officer that the city got the grant for. That was discussed. A press release went out, and I get to be on the interview panel for that tomorrow. So if anybody's out there and a parent has a concern or grandparent, contact me.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Copperstein?
Nothing.
Mr. Doring?
Oh, thank you.
Okay. I'll just very quickly mention as we look at our fire preparedness moving into the future, Mr. Presswich and I met with Supervisor Diane Dillon recently, and then this week I'm meeting with some folks from the Deer Park Firewise Council, and I'm hoping by the next City Council meeting I'll have more of a report on the Firewise Council and some more thoughts on fire preparedness as we move towards that season. So that's my report on that, and we'll now move to presentations and public recognitions. Starting 6.1 is March is American Red Cross Month. 2019. We have a proclamation presented to Annie Schaefer, James Jett, and Kathleen Scanlon. And I have that proclamation that I will read from. Are the recipients here? Could you stand with me, please? Thank you. City of St. Helena Proclamation, American Red Cross Month 2019. More than 137 years ago, the American Red Cross was established as a humanitarian organization guided by 7 fundamental principles, including humanity, impartiality, and independence, to provide services to those in need, regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or citizenship status. Today, the American Red Cross is one of the largest humanitarian organizations in the world and delivers its mission every day to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. Every year, the American Red Cross responds to an average of more than 62,000 disasters across the country, from small home fires to devastating massive disasters. Last year's large crises included mudslides in California, a volcano in Hawaii, wildfires in Colorado and California, destructive hurricanes in Florida and in the Carolinas, and a devastating typhoon in U.S. territories. Thousands of American Red Cross volunteers provided around-the-clock shelter for disaster victims, served millions of meals and snacks with partners, and distributed millions of relief items. March is Red Cross Month, a special time to recognize and thank the Red Cross volunteers and donors who give of their time and resources to help members of the community. The Red Cross depends on these local heroes to deliver help and hope during a disaster. We applaud our heroes here in the cities of Napa and St. Helena, who give of themselves to assist their neighbors when they need a helping hand. The American Red Cross shelters, feeds, and provides emotional support to victims of disasters, supplies about 40% of the nation's blood, teaches skills that save lives, provides international humanitarian aid, and supports military members and their families. We dedicate the month of March to all those who support the American Red Cross mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. Our community depends on the American Red Cross, which relies on volunteers and the generosity of the public to perform its mission. Now, therefore, I, Jeff Ellsworth, Mayor of St. Helena, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Constitution and laws of St. Helena and California, do hereby proclaim March 2019 as Red Cross Month. I encourage all Americans to support this organization and its noble humanitarian mission. In witness whereof I have here unto set my hand this 12th day of March in the year of 2019, and of the city of St. Helena and the state of California. And I will sign this. And if you have a few words, that would be wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Can we have a Kodak moment first?
Certainly.
Picture, if you don't mind. White button. Oh. Okay.
There we go. Maybe get out of the light a little. There you go.
You want to take your pen? I just wanted to say a few things. Thank you very much, St. Helena City Council and Mayor, for this proclamation. We really appreciate it, and I'm going to put my plug in for anybody that wants to become a volunteer. We always are looking for dedicated, compassionate people. All you have to do is jump online to AmericanRedCross.org and follow the prompts. I also wanted to mention a program that we started a couple of years ago. It's called Sound the Alarm. And this is a program where we go to high-risk areas and we evaluate people who might need better alarm systems if they don't have any smoke alarms. And these, what we do is we get a team together, and we typically work with the city fire departments and go to these high-risk areas and canvass and find out who is willing to have us install for free the 10-year smoke alarms. It's really a great program. This last year, since July 1st, we've gone into about 87 homes, I think, and installed over 200 alarms. So this is one of the best programs, I think, that works every day to help people in the future and lowers the risk of deaths by home fires. So the other thing I wanted to mention is we actually responded to 13 home fires since July 1st in this community, in the Napa County. So when I say community, I really mean the whole county. So anyway, thank you very much. We always appreciate the extra publicity as well, because as you know, we are not government funded. We only get donations from donors like you. So thank you again. Really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we will move on to 6.2. This is the St. Helena Downtown Streetscape presentation by Gates and Associates, and this was prepared by Ms. Smithies.
I'd like to welcome David Gates with Gates and Associates up to the podium to provide a brief presentation on the Downtown Streetscape project and where we're heading and all the public outreach that we're having in the weeks and months ahead. So with that, I'll let David take over. We also presented at the Planning Commission last week because we want to get this out as much as possible. So please share if you know folks that are on the email or online as much, or to just please come out to all the workshops that David's going to present.
Thank you, Erica. Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor, staff. Thank you for hiring us to come do this. This is a magic job, a magic place, as was pointed out earlier. We're very appreciative of that. And I'm really here just to kind of let you get a snapshot of what's coming at you. It's going to come fast and furious, and it's going to be a lot of discussion, and you'll see us a few times. But we have a website up, so everything I say you can ignore because it's all in there. But I'm just going to kind of give you a quickie here. So basically, we're a team of 3. BKF Engineers is the prime. And there is a grant for the Main Street, and a lot of it is underground. Sewer, water, curbs, gutters, and technical things, and a lot of work with Caltrans and a lot of other things. That they're not here tonight, but they will be at other presentations to answer a lot of technical questions. We are landscape architects. We do more of what you see and how it feels, and we're also responsible for the outreach. You know, we're the ears, and we're the patterns that we need you to come and work with us. And M Group is SHMC. So we don't do anything that gets us crosswords about other realities, and there are many. This just gives you a sense. The grant is for the Ochre line, and that's Main Street. basically from Mitchell to Pine, actually Southbridge. And that's going to be the reality. And that is really what we're calling phase 2. So to do a good job on that, assume it's the stove, we really need to understand the kitchen. So the green area is really the larger scale vision area. So what is the community vision for the green area? And it's not going to be fixed. It's going to be a discussion. It's going to be general suggestions and directions. But to do a proper job on Main Street, we really need to have a good understanding of what we think that is. And so the process will get into both of those. So basically, giving you a sense of what it is we're trying to deal with, we see 3 blocks, sectors, or regions, really, and going from right to left. First impression, entry, and the corridor, Main Street, slices right through the middle of the vision area, which are the big, larger blocks. So it's our job as designers to understand, and I won't get into details, but entries, first impressions, center points, architectural edges, softer edges, what we're calling the civic node, what's going to happen with the park. There are discussions about City Hall. There are discussions about the purity of the historic aspects of the architecture. And then there's Money Lane, which is a huge opportunity, and it has all of its issues. So we're starting with kind of a gentle, large-scale look, and we're going to use these diagrams to sort of ask questions and get you, the community, and different levels of public interest to tell us what you think. So it's really about that. We have a lot of ideas. We've done a lot of these, but this is a unique place, and there's a lot of character and expectation. We want to meet that. So the first part of this, the green part, is the vision, and it's the first part of the schedule, and we're sort of getting into that right now. The ochre part is the Main Street, and you can see it's got a longer duration. And the sort of blue-gray parts are the different segments, starting out with Caltrans, who has a lot to say about your street, and a lot of other issues about sewer line plugs and trees that are causing problems with the streetscape. So we broke it into incremental areas. And the key one for many people is going to be when we break ground in March of 2021. That's going to be a tough one. We're going to start changing road patterns, and we're going to have a lot of noise out there and things that are going to change life. So you can see the duration. We'd like to get that wrapped up as cleanly, as quickly as we can, but you can see where we are now. We're actually into the March part of it, and we're going to go into probably easily the fall of 2021. So clear their goals, and we're going to generate more of these as we go through this process. But obviously, these are things, you've done a lot of good studies, were very helpful for us. Things are changing on main streets, things are changing in downtowns, you've got the internet there. So for us, the economic health, we said at the interviews, keep the soul. This place is magic. Understand what that is. Small town, historic. There are a lot of aspects of it. We'll be getting into that. So the history, the incremental plans, it's not going to happen overnight. So we need to talk about what is the logical progression and how do we make it as the surgery is less intrusive as possible. We see a chance to build community, pull people together. Let's get some discussions that haven't happened yet. And let it bring a force of gravity towards a good solution. Look to the future. The grant and a lot of what's going on today are what's called complete streets. So the bike and the pedestrian and the trucks. There's a lot of grapes and things moving through here as well. So how does that all work together? We can't cannibalize the parking. There are businesses out there that need to survive. So how do we talk about that, and what are they, and how does it differ? And then we need to get into phase 1, which is a generic, and then of course the grant itself, there's timetables to that, there are economic realities. So those are prime to us. So we're really designing 2 things. We're designing the Main Street, and we're designing a process to listen, to communicate, and to make the right decisions about Main Street. So there are 3 rounds of this. Round number 1, and we're starting this actually a week from Wednesday. You'll see in a minute. What do you want? We're going to do a lot of asking. There's going to be an online survey. So we're going to prime you. We're going to throw images and character and things at you, some outrageous and some you would expect. And you're going to respond to those. You're going to tell us emphatically, yes, no, maybe, and you're going to prioritize. So it starts out with us being an ear. Then we jump into the vision, which is the larger scale, 10,000 feet. What are we doing in these surrounding areas? Then we're going to dive right into the bricks and mortar of Main Street. And we put together some players in this, the steering committee, and these colors will show up again on the next diagram. Steering committee, which is rather select. The Main Street stakeholders are people that are directly invested in it. Then the community itself, where there's stakeholders plus the larger community. And then we're going to be coming back to Planning Commission and Council. You will see us a number of times. So these are the 4 legs of the stool, if you will, that we need all to be in sync, and you'll probably get tired of seeing us. This is just talking about the rounds again, and round 1 being the vision, round 2 being getting in, into the more specifics of the vision and working its way down into round 3, which is the streetscape itself. And you can see up there, March 12th is where we are now in the top, that gray area. So the 20th, which is Wednesday, there's going to be a stakeholder at the firehouse from 6 to 7. They'll see a little bit of this show and tell, and then they're going to be turned loose. We're going to have people voting. They're going to see images and character and visions. We're going to arm you with bullets of dots, and you're going to walk up and put a dot on a plan. And so we will know, we will see priorities, and we'll see what works and what doesn't work. And then you'll see the 22nd, we're going to be at the Ritchie House, and we're going to be there from 10 to 2. We're going to hang out some balloons and put a banner out there, and we're going to make a lot of noise. And we want everybody who has any interest, we're going to have good food, expect nice things to drink, no wine. But we're going to have cookies and other nice things, and we're going to be there in force to just do the best job we can to listen like we just did a week from Wednesday. I won't get into the weeds, but then we're going to get more into, steering committee is there. It's a select group. You guys will know about that. They're helping us. They're coaching us through things we need to know because we're outsiders, and so then you see the different groups. You see the different colors of the boxes. And then you can see as we get back into, 2021, again, we'll come back to you after the Planning Commission again, and we're going to bring you what we think is a great design. And we're going to explain to you how it works and why it's on budget and how it's not going to create a lot of dust and a lot of other things we hope we can deliver, but it's complicated and there'll be a lot of parts, a lot of moving parts to it. So the website is up and going. So click onto it. It'll have all this information, and it's going to be updated regularly. So when there's something that transpires that's meaningful, useful, things we've learned, Caltrans updates about how nice they're going to be, and they're going to love everything we suggest, and they're not going to slow us down. All those good things will be brought to the website, and there's a banner. So, we want you to come. This will be out there. We will make this available. I think we have a number of flyers, so we will find ways. We're not going to drop it from an airplane, but we want to make it as available as we can. We need numbers now. We want people to show up, and good or bad, tell us, we want all you folks to be there. I was expecting another 50 people here, but I'm counting on you guys to get everyone out there. It'll be fun. It's useful. It's meaningful. We need it. We don't, what's that? Family friendly. That's right. So anyway, it is family friendly. It'll be fun. It's exciting. We want people to get involved. We want ideas. We want suggestions, slogans, history, old photographs. Now's the time to throw it at us. It's information for us. We'll cipher through it. We'll digest it. We'll homogenize it, and we'll come back with some preferred things. And then we're going to ask those again. Is this what we heard? Is that what you're thinking? And it's very important. The way this place looks, the way it feels, the kinds of events you're going to do here will be determined by this process. So it's a huge fork in the road. We see it as a great opportunity. And I think all of your studies kind of led to that. So anyway, we're excited. It's really just to kind of tell you it's there. The staff has been great. You guys are coaching us, directing us well, giving us free rein, maybe more than you should, but that's what we love. So it'll be fun. So join us on the ride.
Very good. Are there any initial questions from council?
No, I just wanted to tell you to make sure you get extra cookies because I invited all of the kids through the public schools through their leadership
Good.
teams. So not, a small group's going to come on their student council at the elementary school. They've committed for sure.
Cool.
Their student council is going to go to every single class at the elementary school and get ideas. They're going to walk down and attend the meeting at lunchtime with
Actually,
the
walk
teacher's
them around
direction.
before and make them think about it. What do they like? What
I'm
do
sure
they
their
don't like?
teachers will, but I'm
That'd be
in
huge.
touch with
Now
them.
they have to
yeah.
vote.
Yes. So
Okay.
just so you know, they're going to be there.
Lots of cookies, okay.
Yeah.
Forewarned.
Are there any other council comments? So the website is cultivatesthelena.com.
Right.
The community open house is March 22nd. And where is that?
The Ritchie Building
The Ritchie Building.
Yep.
Okay.
on the west side, right in the core.
Formerly Goodman's,
Okay.
Yep.
1335 Main.
Yeah, there you go.
And so the comment period, if people have comments, can they come in over time to the council or to the website, or do
There'll
they
be
need
an
to?
online survey as well.
Okay.
So comments you missed by being present, you can go online and vote. And we're kind of working on what is the nature of that. So they'll be able to comment throughout. At a certain
Okay.
point, when we get a preferred plan that you guys like, is when we need to stop talking about it.
And when is sort of that kind of cut off?
But if you go back here, if you look at, well, let me back it up. So if you see the dates there, I would say by the time round 2, when we're back to you guys in July, that's when we have the vision, and that's when we have a pretty good handle on starting with Main Street. So I would say we're getting pretty tight at July, and then when we come back to City Council there, we're pretty much set. We're going to be bringing you plans. We're always open, and I think if it's you guys will direct us, and Mark will. We're always open-minded, but we're going to kind of zone in on what we think is a preferred plan. So the window starts to close a little bit. But I would say if you're looking probably toward the end of summer, is probably where it starts to wind down pretty well.
Okay, so in this period, March, April, May, this is a really good period for people to put as much in as possible so you can start collating the information.
And it starts generic. It starts with the vision, right, the green area, and then it zones in on the Main Street itself. We want both, but the vision comes first. We need to understand the kitchen so that the stove makes sense with where we put it. So it will start big, and then it's going to get small.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
So cultivatesthelena.com, that's the website.
That's the
and
website.
Thank you very much for all your efforts. And I think this is going to be, as you say, a way to bring the whole community in on this process. So thank you.
We see it as a dance. We're striking up the band. We want everyone on the dance floor to dance with it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move staff briefings. I see none on 7.1. Consent items. Members of the council or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. We have 8.1. We have 8.2. We have, and if anybody wants to pull one, they can mention it. We have 8.3. Now, this needs a little bit of comment from the city attorney.
Yeah, very briefly, a non-substantive comment from the city clerk, actually, who is unavailable here today. What happened at the first reading was, as the council may recall and the public may recall, that in addition to the ordinance that was brought before the council, there was also the actual resolution suspending the curfew, and that resolution was always intended to become effective after the ordinance was effective because the resolution required that. This is just notification to the council and to the public that the resolution, which the council did adopt with the first reading of the ordinance, had an inaccuracy in it. It actually referred to what we all thought would be the date of the second reading. In fact, the second reading is tonight. And so this is just to notify people that that resolution, which already has been approved and signed, will have that change made as a ministerial matter.
Very good. Thank you. So that's 8.3, and then we'll move to 8.4. And Now we're at 8.5, and this one, due to Brown Act considerations, requires I read the entire item, so I'm going to do that. 8.5, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution authorizing the addition of 1.0 full-time equivalent, FTE, to the city manager's office and funding the position for the remaining fiscal year 2018 and 19 budget in amount not to exceed $37,939, adding the position to the city's current organizational structure and approving the job description, authorize the recruitment, and duly approve and adopt publicly available salary schedule for mid-managers in accordance with the requirement of California Code of Regulations Title II, Section 570.5, which includes amended pay schedule for fiscal year 2018-19 to include assistant to the city manager position. And so with those items, I will invite a motion to pass all of those.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
May we have a roll call?
Councilmember Knudsen?
Yes.
Councilmember Schutel?
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Vice Chair Doring?
Yes.
And Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. Okay, we'll move from the consent items to public hearings. 9.1, introduction and first reading of an ordinance proposing to amend and restate St. Helena Municipal Code, Chapter 17.136.050, temporary uses, to create a temporary use permit, an administrative review process, and a fee for such permits citywide. This was prepared by Mr. Hausch.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. As you mentioned, the item before the council this evening is a first reading of an ordinance which will create a temporary use permit effective citywide, and also kind of direct the review process and create the fee. The project has been identified as exempt from CEQA and or consistent with past CEQA actions. The council will recall, as a part of the 3-year adopted goals, the city wanted to kind of work on some economic sustainability and safeguard St. Helena's unique culture. In September of 2018, as a part of that effort, the council adopted the downtown economic strategy with prioritized initiatives to enhance the economic vitality of downtown. One of those items was the creation of a a temporary use permit. Through several meetings in October through February of 2019, October of 2018, staff presented a draft ordinance to the Planning Commission for review and direction. They ultimately approved that 4-0, so unanimously, and the item was brought before the City Council. City Council directed additional discussions. There's a significant amount of background in the staff report. Ultimately adopting an urgency ordinance to allow some of these initiatives to take effect during the holiday shopping season, and directing staff to bring back a permanent ordinance after providing additional direction. That was most recently done on February 12th, where the City Council provided final direction to staff regarding this ordinance. And there's some discussion in the staff report regarding what that direction was. And so staff has incorporated that direction into the final draft of the ordinance and is bringing it forward for first reading. It's worth pointing out that as a part of the fee, staff is recommending, and council previously agreed, that collection of the fee would be deferred. The fee is proposed at $500 to cover the time, but we are proposing to defer that for 12 months from the effective date of the ordinance to both allow staff to create the process and work out any details with regards to referrals and getting input from other departments, as well as to help stimulate downtown activity. So with that, it's recommended by the department that the City Council find that the ordinance is exempt from the requirements of CEQA and or consistent with past actions as identified in the report and the attached ordinance, and introduce and conduct a first reading of the ordinance to create a temporary use permit, the administrative review process, and the fee for such permits citywide. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any initial council questions or comments? Oh, I'll open it for public comment. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council.
I would just like to make my last pitch that we do not allow pop-ups as a temporary, formula businesses as a pop-up, even at 90 days. I think we could have some things that might surprise us, or maybe there can be an appeal route for them or something. But to me, a formula business, they pretty much have a business plan, and I doubt that they would be coming in here to try this out as a way to see if they could actually get a business going. I think they do much more due diligence before they go anywhere. And I'm just concerned about the negative effects of whatever might show up.
Any other council comment on that? Not seeing much.
I have but this, I don't want to get in the way of a discussion on Ms. Koberstein's question. But in the Exhibit A, it does, on item D2, it does say a phrase which I don't understand. It says includes or does not include non-restaurant formula businesses. So perhaps that's a similar question. This is page 25.
We don't have pages.
I know, it's confusing. But it's Exhibit A, 17.136.050, temporary uses, and then in the element D2.
That may be an older version, actually.
Am I looking at the wrong?
I read it to understand that you can't be a formula restaurant and do a pop-up when I read it.
I think the restaurant's not on the table. I think we're.
No, that's something that we couldn't do, that was in there already. It said we're allowing formula businesses to come in under this, what's in front of us, for the pop-up permit thing that we're doing right now, pop-up. But you can't be a formula restaurant and be a pop-up.
That is correct, and there is a older version attached, and I apologize for that. It's less than clear. If you look on page 14, that's the current draft.
Right.
The red line draft, and so you'll see D2 there identifies pop-up uses are defined as non-formula retail sales, museums, art exhibits, restaurants, or cafes for up to 12 months when conducted on non-residential properties. And then based on the last direction, formula pop-up uses are uses which are within the formula definition in the zoning code, and they're limited to 90 days of operation on non-residential parcels.
You're right, I was looking at the prior. What is the definition again for all of our edification on formula?
So it's essentially a standardized business, as similar to Councilmember Koberstein's description. So folks who have standardized architecture, standardized interiors, uniforms, and multiple businesses. So there's not a definition regarding the number of retail outlets or outlets that would trigger. It's more how they operate and if they're standardized across their business model. And I could find the exact definition if you'd like.
That's good enough.
I would still like to allow them, just because I don't understand the negatives yet for that short time. And when I've read about it, I like the positives. Like, I like the idea of a Nike coming in, and what they use this for is not necessarily to have a Nike store, but they bring their latest, hottest, sometimes they do collaborations with designers, and you buy the shoe in the store and you get a bag. Now you can't find that bag anywhere because everybody loved it. So this would allow our town to be a candidate for that. So I like the idea of why wouldn't we, when we attract a luxury tourist person here, why wouldn't we want to be open to that kind of experience when it's not long-term? And there's a business model now out there where formula businesses are doing that, and it's specialized. And it's something cool and would bring new energy, and people would want to come here to buy that product if we were lucky enough to get them to choose us to do it.
How long do they operate?
It's short.
So would that be something that might be an event as opposed to a retail use, or? You know, something like that I can see, but we did just deny a formula business in downtown a few months ago with the support of a lot of the business community that was concerned about it. And I just wouldn't want something like that to sneak in the door.
But that's a good example where I've heard a couple people, I don't know if it's true or not, have told me that they're in there anyway. They came back under another name, and so we couldn't control it anyway.
I think we're looking into it.
Yeah, don't give our case away.
Is you know, I have concern. I think you make some excellent points, but I do have concerns. So the sales methods, even if it's somebody's a formula business that does their sales methods somewhere else where they're acceptable, do we have some control over the sales methods if it's inconsistent with our?
So any action to approve a temporary use essentially requires staff to look to the zoning code for specific direction regarding how things are to be done. However, this does provide more flexibility, but our code does talk about limiting basically how marketing is done, and people to be on the street is prohibited for a current business. That being said, in some pop-ups, formula business may propose to bring in kind of a kiosk type and be out and on the street as a part of generating the activity and trying to get people's interest. And so you'll recall that the intent of this is to try to provide some flexibility. So I don't want to say that someone wouldn't ever propose a use or a use would never be approved that would not include some element of external retail marketing or sales.
Okay.
So someone could ask under this current
They could ask,
provision.
but they would still have to go through a review process.
That's correct.
I think that's good, but I think we should look at paragraph B, which says they may not comply with normal development or use standards of the applicable zoning district, but may otherwise be acceptable, you know, and they're specifically not subject to design review or parking. So is it a case-by-case thing where somebody comes and says to you, I want to park
That's
a
exactly
kiosk?
right. That's exactly right. So the intent is to provide flexibility to address the unanticipated. So as these business models develop, or someone gets an idea for one of these, you know, I'm using the example. There's an empty parcel right now on the corner of Charter Oak and Main Street. That to me seems like a good location for somebody to propose some type of temporary activity. They may not have a significant amount of parking there. Their access may be substandard. However, it may be something that the city may want to use as a means of generating some additional activity to facilitate one of these temporary uses. And so the flexibility in the zoning provisions is intentional. However, you'll recall the council had some concerns over that. And so signs and the placement or location of merchandise was specifically excluded from that flexibility. So city staff will utilize the zoning standards for signs and the placement and location of merchandise straight from the zoning district as a part of how the temporary use is reviewed.
Is there any?
I'm not here, if that's for me. No, I'm just kidding. You know, I acknowledge Mary's concerns, but I also think that it's worth at least trying. I think we have to remember that we can always change the ordinance. I would be surprised if many formula businesses actually took advantage of this for 90 days. And if they do, and it turns out to be something that's less desirable than we anticipated, then we go back and we change our ordinance and we work around it. But let's try to encourage energy downtown. And if something happens that is problematic, we go back and say, no, that's not going to work, or we limit it to 1 month, or we make adjustments along the way. I'd rather try it and see if it works and kind of go through some of the difficult spots while we're doing that and just work through it. I don't think anything's set in stone in life, and we can always change it. So I'm not a big Nike shoe fan, but I see your point. So I'm willing to at least try it.
You know, I do also want to make sure that it's what we do remains acceptable to the existing merchants, that their investments and efforts over the years, they don't feel sideswiped by something, so that they know that there's a process too by which, if they're recognizing something's not working, they can make us aware of it. And then we still retain the flexibility to relook at things. Ms. Koberstein, what do you think?
I'll go along with this. We'll see who shows up. So
Okay.
far, we've had one pop-up.
And it's still popped, isn't it?
It was as of last week, I think.
How long is that permit, Mr.?
So it was up to 90 days based on the temporary ordinance. However, that was somewhat of a unique situation in that she could have, under the council's other kind of changes to the ordinance to support business, she could have come in as a home furnishings permitted use. However, for her sign and some of the other approvals, it would have taken a little bit longer, so she chose to apply as a pop-up. However, she could continue as a permitted operation, subject to some other provisions, getting her signs permanently approved and those types of things.
So if
I hope
I'll move approval of the staff recommendation.
we have a second,
I'll second it.
roll call, please.
I didn't mean to cut you off. If there's more discussion, of course.
I don't think it was material, but I'm hoping that some pop-up uses are then converted to long-term
Right.
uses. I'm hoping that people will use this as a chance to experiment, and that's all.
I think that's part of our thought process and what we're intending to do. If it's a good fit for our community, then we should encourage it and encourage long-term use. They're trying to look at the risk. Is it going to die on the vine, or is it going to be something that grows and it's going to be acceptable? And I think they use that as an opportunity to kind of check it out that way. So.
Very good. So do we have a motion and a second? A roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilmember Schutel,
Yes.
Councilmember Knudsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein,
Yes.
and Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Okay. We will move to old business. This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of St. Helena determining that no substantial changes requiring preparation of a subsequent EIR have been made to the Upper York Creek Habitat Restoration Project as a result of proposed modifications, and approving the addendum together with the previously certified final EIR as the appropriate environmental document for the Upper York Creek Habitat Restoration Project as modified. And this is prepared by Ms. Smithies.
Yes, actually, it's a joint effort with our city attorney's office, but we are pushing or continuing this item again. We're hoping to bring this back substantially revised on March 26th. We have a tight timeline, but we're working with Phase 1, the private property owner of Phase 1, which is the sediment, downstream sediment traps, which are pertinent to the Phase 2, which is notching the dam. So we're coordinating with them on some work and the easements. So we're hoping to bring everything back together with the easements on March 26th. We have a tight time frame.
Okay. So we're not going to be asking any questions on this tonight. We're going to put this off till the 26th.
Correct.
Okay, very good. We will move forward. Now we will move to 10.2, consideration of a resolution approving revision number 1 to City Council Policy PFI 0005, Leak Adjustment Policy, and repealing and rescinding Resolution 2016-161 and any previous policies or administrative memoranda which are inconsistent with City Council Policy P-FI. Am I saying that right? FI? Yes. Dash 0005, Leak Adjustment Policy. This is prepared by April Mitz, Finance Director.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. Just the FI stands for finance, if that makes it easier for any of my finance policies. So this is a continuation from the last council meeting regarding the leak adjustment policy and extending it to non-residential business or for non-residential accounts. So on February 12th, the City Council did make some specific recommendations for changes, as well as ask for some additional research and insight. So based on the recommendations, the following following changes have been made to the leak adjustment policy. The first is extending the leak adjustment policy to all accounts, so not just residential, it includes all accounts. Expanded the language in policy section 14 for potential reimbursement back to the city to include that if any reimbursement is received by that entity who received a leak adjustment, that they do need to come back and let us know so we can recoup those costs. And then the third was added language in the procedure section 2 to require leak adjustment requests to be submitted to the City of St. Helena Finance Department within 30 days of issuance of the bill in which the leak occurred. And additionally, at the February 12th meeting, the council did direct staff to further research 3 items that I'm going to discuss below. In order to provide the analytics, staff did use a 1-month sample of non-residential customers who received leak letters and based on use could potentially have had a leak. It doesn't necessarily mean that they had a leak or they would apply for it, but we just tried to find some analytics. The first item that we researched was a sewer leak adjustment for non-residential properties. We did look at, right now our residential properties do not allow for sewer leak adjustments, and that is because it's based on the winter average. And if a leak adjustment does take place during the summer months where it would affect the winter average on the residential side, we do take that into consideration when we look at the winter average. Non-residential accounts do not have a winter average. They pay for actual use for the wastewater that coincides with the water system. And so right now for non-residential, we have 169 sewer accounts. We did survey the 11 California public agencies, and 9 of the 11 do allow for leak adjustment credits on non-residential sewer accounts. Of the 9, 3 did stipulate that a credit is given to sewer only if the leak occurred outdoors, and it can be shown that none of that water entered into our city sewer system. Even if the water is considered clean water and it goes into our city sewer system, it still goes through the same chemical processing. So that was the first item. The second item that we researched was the maximum leak adjustment amounts, whether we should set those for both residential and non-residential. And so the table that's provided for residential, it is based on actual information from July 1st, 2016 to December 31st, 2018. For the non-residential accounts, again, that is a sampling based on a 1-month sample of institutions that did receive leak letters. It doesn't necessarily mean that they had a leak, but we had to use some sampling. So you'll see for residential, the average adjustments that we did per month was 2.4 adjustments per month. What could potentially qualify for non-residential is 9. For residential, the average adjustment we actually made was $301. For non-residential, based on that sampling, it would have been $78. It would have been the average leak adjustment for wastewater. The average adjustment, if you remove the minimum and maximum, because some were extremes, like whether they were pool leaks, so that actually brought it down to residential for $269 and for non-residential $160. Minimum maximum for residential, the adjustment was anywhere from $26 up to $2,100. So again, that was the points that we removed to get a true average. And for non-residential, it would have been $12 to $350. Average units for residential during that time frame were 43 units, and for non-residential were 25. And then the percent that applied that were eligible for for residential was only 2%. And again, out of all the sewer accounts we have, or sewer water accounts for non-residential, 38% would qualify. It does not necessarily mean that they would actually take advantage of it. Additionally, staff did research other cities who have maximum amounts in place, and the cities that we found were American Canyon has a maximum credit of 500. Benicia, it was of 18 units. So what I did is I put that into what the St. Helena peak rates would be, and it would equate to $117. Pleasanton had a maximum credit for residential of $200 for water, and then for commercial or non-residential properties, it was $800 for water and $800 for sewer, so a total of $1,600. The third item that's council asked us to research was appeal for bill credits and/or policy exceptions. Currently, right now, we do not have an appeal process. It goes to the finance director and it stops, and from there they can go to city council, similar to the instance we've had recently with Trevinier. And so what we had done is we had actually removed the language stating that all decisions from the finance director or designee are final. And we did add the language that the leak adjustments would first go through the finance department. I could deny that, and then from there, they can bring it to the city manager or their designee, which would have the ability up to $5,000, and anything above $5,000 would come to city council. So based on that research and those statistics, the recommendations that staff is making for city council, and we have incorporated into the policy that's in front of you for adoption tonight, is to allow for sewer adjustments to non-residential customers for 100% of the excess use if the leak was outdoors and it can be shown that the excess water never entered into the city sewer system. That does not affect the general fund, because at that point we're just adjusting the amount of credits or units that shows that they were used in our system, so it actually does not affect the general fund. The second item that we're recommending is establishing a cap on leak adjustments for all customers, and this is based off of the research for what other entities have been doing, as well as what our analytics are showing what our average adjustments are. So we're recommending a residential cap for water of 300, a non-residential cap for water at 500, and then a cap for sewer would be limited to the number of calculated excess units, and that would be based on it being shown that it did not enter into the city's sewer system. And then the third recommendation is expanding the ability for appeals to bill credits and or policy exceptions as outlined above, giving the city manager up to $5,000, and then anything above that would go to city council. So based on that, I am happy to answer any questions, and my recommendation is that we go ahead and move forward with the revisions to the policy as outlined.
Thank you. Is there any initial council comment?
I have a question, and I'd like to apologize, Ms. Mintz, that I didn't ask you ahead of time, so that you might research this if need be, but I'm hoping we can just do this back of the envelope. So if we had 100% of the folks that have a leak apply for an adjustment, what is the estimated fiscal impact? And so that would be all the residential, 300 max, and all the non-residential, which is 500 max for the water, and then let's make an estimate on the sewer. And sorry to ask you to do this in real time. Does that make sense?
It does, but what about the 2%? Only 2% were eligible.
Right, but so 2%, but all 2%, because not everybody applies. Mm-hmm. So if the 2%, 100% of the 2% applies, what's our fiscal impact? Because that's the one thing that I would love to see. Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much.
The envelope's digital now.
Yeah, and we need to play music in the background now while this is going on.
Thank you, Elaine. You get credit for that. Musical credit.
Depending on what it has been based on the analytics, it's about $20,000 a year.
Thank you. That's actually very helpful.
And that's also in the policy is you can only apply for leak adjustments once every 5 years.
And of that 20,000, what is the residential component and what is the non-residential?
The residential would be $8,640, and then the non-residential would be just about $11,000.
Right. So extending this to non-residential would be an additional potential exposure of about $10,000 to $12,000.
That is correct. And then by issuing the caps on it, it would eliminate some of the higher dollar amounts that we were previously exposed to on the residential side.
I like that, actually, because it's, the money has to come from somewhere, right? Thank you.
Any other comments before I open it to public? I will open it for public comment.
Anthony McKelly, 1125 Cornell. I'm not so much concerned about the money you're charging. I'm concerned that the leak for water doesn't come to your end of your billing. At least that's what I was told last time I was here. So in the meantime, if you had a leak in the beginning of the month, you could lose thousands of gallons of water, because I have a client that actually paid $1,500 for a leak. that, and water is very precious here. And I asked the question, why can't we do this electronically? And I was told our system doesn't do that as of yet. But years ago, I used to get calls from a previous fellow that ran the water department during the course of a month and tell me I had a leak at a client's house, because all you have to do to detect a leak is that the meter's running 24 hours a day. It's pretty easy to tell. Other cities do this. So I went out to look in my meter the other day, and I have an electronic device on my meter that I assume allowed the city to do this. So my question is that all obsolete equipment now? And we can't do that? Because, like I said, my only concern is not the money people would pay, but we have a critical problem here with water. We buy a lot of water from Napa. And it could be that all these leaks that we're getting could offset all this other water we have, and otherwise the city might look into that system so leaks can be detected immediately to not cause damage to wherever it's leaking. And most clients, a lot of them are just toilets running that the flapper doesn't sit. But I've had them outside in landscaping also, and you can't find it in the winter so easy because it's wet outside, but in summer it's very easy. But like I said, I'm more concerned about all the water we lose through this, and maybe the city could tell us sometime how much water is lost through these leak things that happen of all the billings we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? I'll close the public comment. Is there any other council comment at this point?
Of course, I have a comment. There's a thing in the policy for non-residential. We're extending sewer to water that is spilled outside, meaning it's related to the irrigation system. And in the policy, it says you're not going to get this credit if this leak happens if we're in a phase 1 emergency situation or greater. But even before you get to phase 1, we have other regulations limiting irrigation, certain times of the day, limiting it after a rainfall. And it just seems counterintuitive to me that we should be giving somebody a rebate if they had a leak in their irrigation system. And we don't know if it was running after, well, in some periods of the year we'd know if it had rained or not, but it just seems if we're trying to encourage less outdoor irrigation generally, that we shouldn't be giving people rebates. They should be being diligent about how their systems are operating, and we shouldn't be subsidizing that.
Any thoughts?
I agree. I think we have created a standard of reasonable person. You can't be negligent, right? I mean, there is at least a basic standard that most people can kind of conform to. If people are just really ignoring these situations, then we should be able to say, well, we should be able to probe that a little bit at the administrative level to make sure that it's a legitimate claim. I think that legitimate claims, as long as they're not repeated, are okay. If people are just not diligent in keeping up their irrigation equipment, I think that would probably fall into a category of negligence or a fault on their part, or whatever you want to call it. So I think that administration should be able to make that call and ask those questions and probe it at the earliest possible point to make sure that it's a legitimate claim.
There are several policies from different cities that we looked at that do not allow leak adjustments for irrigation or pool filling. So there are some very specifics out there that do not allow that. So I think that would be in line, and if council so directs, we can easily add a line in there that irrigation and pool filling as well.
Do we allow pool filling? I mean, you can't go from 0 to 100, but we allow, of course, the interimly, but
It was
can you explain this?
the situation we had was an autofill. So they had a valve automatically in their pool, so they had a leak that was in the pool. Sensors recognized it was low, so it kept autofilling it, and they didn't know it until they actually received their first bill that it was continually autofilling their pool. So we have allowed it in the past. That was the large one, the one that was $2,100. That was one of the largest leaks we've ever seen, and it was due to a autofill pool.
Well, that is a problem.
Does the staff feel like with the way it's written now that there's enough control at the staff level to look at reasonable, the idea of reasonableness?
I believe using the line where it talks about willful or negligent behavior, I feel like that would give us the ability to deny something based on that. Additionally, with the limits, with caps that are set of $300 and $500, we won't see another $2,100 bill. At least we're actually going to be able to cap it. But I believe it does give us enough leeway to make that determination, as well as going up to the city manager if they are not happy with my decision.
I think I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, for example, our own code says you're supposed to turn off your irrigation between November and April. So there should be no leak adjustments from November to April because you shouldn't even have your irrigation running. So just more food for.
Well, that perhaps can be noted in the policy that the November to April.
Yeah, perhaps that's a way to deal with it. Right now, the policy talks about phase 1 water regulations, which are when things are getting really bad. But we have suggested and mandatory conservation measures that apply to everybody, and several of them relate to irrigation.
I was just thinking the weather is getting so strange that we've had these like extreme hot periods and then it's rainy and cold, and I think that we don't even know how the weather's going to be. And I know we know what's right now in the moment in our code, but this is something that we're going to have to look at in the future with climate change.
So what about just matching the fact that if irrigation is not allowed, then there will be no irrigation rebate? So we don't have to reset November to April. We just say if it's not, and therefore it's sort of a one-time apply to everything.
Isn't that the
I think that would be under the willful category. I mean, we can make it explicit, but I think we need to be. Right. I think we need to just be firm on the standards that we've created. We could add maybe otherwise complying with other laws or something in that one category where we talk about those standards, including including complying with other existing municipal laws, something like that.
I think other laws would be good advice because the language that the council, I think, probably adopted within the last couple of years related to the governor's proclamation a few years ago, where a number of cities essentially, out of an interest in continued conservation, adopted the guidelines that were issued by the governor related to conservation. They're just best practices. And so my prior city did the same thing. They adopted the guidance that was outlined in the governor's proclamation. But I can envision a situation where a future drought may result in additional restrictions that are promulgated by the governor. And so having some flexible language, I think, can be helpful.
And is that enough direction on that?
Yes. So I'm adding the language to the policy to have a mention of including complying with other existing laws. If council is inclined to be able to move forward with adopting the policy, knowing that we're going to add this in, I would love for that to happen if that's possible.
I'd like to also have us have a brief discussion of the public comment, because I think there is a question about notification that I'm not sure we've resolved adequately, because I know that we can only do it when we drive around. And could you clarify that again for the benefit of the public?
That is correct.
Smithies?
It's a drive-by situation right now. I believe it's $500,000 to upgrade to the cellular version. We've been trying to go back and forth on this, but we didn't include that in the current rate study.
It's a little expansion on that, just for the The hardware itself is about $500,000. The infrastructure we had to put in is closer to 1.2 to 1.5 million to be able to have the radio, the RF frequency signals. I'm not aware. I know there were some devices that were installed in various homes that the owners could choose to do it years ago, but unfortunately that was before my time, and we don't have that program anymore because most of them are not working. But even at that, I don't know what the capacity was of that system.
I think it's a very valid point and something to be thinking about. I discussed with the city manager earlier. Part of what we're doing with this water and sewer master plan is really looking at our system and how it works and how to maximize and optimize it. And so perhaps this is part of that discussion as we look at the water and sewer master plan, how we work on earlier warning systems and that sort of thing.
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, basically with PG&E, they have a mesh network in our town. Fascinating, right? So basically they're dribbling data from all of our meters to other meters to a connection point where they're assembling and therefore can tell if there's issues with my or your or anyone's feed from an electricity perspective. And maybe at some point that's something that would be an interesting upgrade for us. Maybe.
One other comment that came up from somebody was, and I went and read through it, and I didn't see this, but I just want to ask. When they read it, they had felt that they would, if they were coming in with a claim, that they would be signing away their ability. Once they signed up for the claim, they would somehow be signing away their ability to argue it later. And I couldn't find that language in there, so I didn't think it was there. So it was a misunderstanding, I think.
Yeah, that is not there. The appeal would come through the finance department. If I denied it, they could appeal to the city manager, and then it could be.
That's what okay. I just wanted to clarify that. So very good, thank you. So is there a motion to pass this as recommended with the addition of the language referring to other laws?
I'm not ready for a motion, but I'd like to offer just a couple of words to clarify one section under procedures number 2. That's on page 7. This says leak adjustment request must be submitted to the City of St. Helena Finance Department within 30 days of the issuance of the bill in which the leak occurred. It's a little vague for me. I think it's maybe grammatically problematic. I would offer, first of all, I think it should be the first bill received, so I would say the initial bill, because people can receive several bills, and that charge will continue to be on the bill, so it would be the initial bill. And then I would offer issuance of the initial bill covering the period in which the leak occurred. That's it.
Thank you, Paul. It's a good catch.
And then the adjustment was to not pay for irrigation leaks that occur when other laws, including our own, may restrict them from using our water to irrigate. Whether it's, well, I guess it's only for non-residential, is that correct?
I'm for that. I think we all have consensus on that if they're in violation of another law, they are not able to take advantage of our leak detection policy.
But actually, it's also for, residential as well, right? If I'm watering my lawn in December and I have a leak in it, it's, sorry. I shouldn't be doing it. Okay. So it's both residential and non-residential.
Move approval of the staff recommendation with the clarified language.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Councilmember Schutel?
Yes.
Councilmember Knudsen?
Yes.
And Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. With that, we'll move on to 11, new business. 11.1, consideration of 1, Metropolitan Transportation Commission, MTC, member interest. 2, CASA Legislative Task Force Member Interest. This is prepared by Cindy Jaffopoulos, who is not here, the city clerk. Is there somebody, Mr. Presswich, that will?
I'm going to substitute tonight, if that's okay. This should be a fairly brief item. The city has been invited, all of the cities in Napa County have been invited to provide names of interested potential council members for 2 particular seats that will go through a process that initially will involve our nomination. It will then go to the city selection committee comprised of representatives from each of the cities, and then 3 names, up to 3 names, will be conveyed to the county, and the county board of supervisors will select 1 individual. 1 is for a seat on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. This is a regional transportation planning body. And then the second is for the CASA Legislative Task Force. And CASA is a newly formed group out of MTC that is going to be focused on housing production at all levels of affordability and protecting vulnerable populations from housing instability and displacement. So our focus tonight is identifying any interest on your part, on any of your parts, of names that we would then transmit to the city selection committee, and then we leave it up to them to work with the board of supervisors.
Is there any initial interest in either of these positions?
I find this stuff fascinating and, sort of conceptually have an interest, but it looks like the existing designee from our county is being resubmitted. And so it strikes me that we may not want to bother.
I don't think that's accurate. Actually, I think that there was some correspondence in the report that talked about prior practices with our city selection committees and recommendations that were inconsistent with the legislation that allowed people to appoint to MTC commissions. I don't really think that was relevant to this decision. Alfredo Pedroza is the MTC representative right now, but they're looking for additional folks to serve on this committee, and it's focused on CASA. So if anyone's interested, I think we should put those names forth. And then ultimately, the city selection committee will make a recommendation to the board of supervisors on who's going to represent Napa County. And it doesn't have to be Supervisor Alfredo Pedroza, is my understanding.
So are we looking at 2 different positions here? The MTC is 1 and CASA Focused Task Force is the second.
I'm interested for something with CASA. I don't know which one. I'm interested in our St. Helena having a voice representing.
I think we're just focusing on CASA, right? That committee, as I understand it, not MTC. CASA is under the umbrella of MTC. It's just it's like a subcommittee, right? I mean, maybe you know that.
That is, CASA is there. It's a regional housing concept that they're essentially, it is under the umbrella of MTC, and they're trying to create a body that can implement taxes regionally to try to address housing issues, and they are seeking legislation in Sacramento.
And as I understand it, to add even further, they're trying to get new voices and not just the same voices, the ABAG voices or the MTC voices, folks who offer a local perspective. So I would be happy if you were to serve on it, and we can. I would be happy to serve on it, but I don't have the time to serve on it. It's very. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised you do, but if you're going to do it, I'm not going to discourage you. First of all, you'd have to go through another process,
right?
But we certainly as a body can recommend you, and I'd be happy to do that.
Absolutely, fantastic.
Wait, you don't want it now?
No, I'm thrilled that you're interested. I really
Thank
am,
you.
and I'd be happy to support your nomination.
I thought maybe
through
we
this
could do it together
process.
since there were 2.
May I just ask, am I misreading this, that there's 2 things being asked for?
I think I'm unclear at the moment.
Okay.
And we're asking a specific question right now of the city clerk, who's responding shortly. I think our understanding is there are two.
There's no way that they will put two St. Helena people on either of these, and it's just not going to happen. So, but for CASA, please, absolutely, wonderful.
And I do think it's important that we put our names and our voices in there. So I'd be very supportive of that. If a second spot, the MTC, I'd be happy to put my name forth as well on that. So I think it's important, whether they select us or not, that we stand up and let them know that we want to be heard and part of the discussion.
We have 2 times the chance of getting selected if we have 2 people.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, do we?
And I want to say you might want to disregard some of the things that I just said, because now I realize why they put in that extraneous material. I think that they recognize that the process of appointing Alfredo Pedroza to the MTC was not quite right. So it looks, as I'm reading it, just occurred to me that they're trying to get it right and do a do-over. And so that's you're correct. There are apparently, as it's stated here, there's 2 different positions. So interesting.
So can we move to nominate from the St. Helena City Council Mayor Ellsworth as the MTC representative from Napa County and Councilmember Anna Chateau as
Second.
member of CASA?
City Attorney, am I allowed to vote on that? Sure. Yes. Okay, great.
So do we have a motion?
Yeah.
And a
We do?
second.
And a second?
Yeah.
So we'll have a roll call.
I'm sorry. Would you please clarify who seconded the motion?
I did. Paul Doring.
And that's for 1 for CASA, Ms. Chateau, and 1 for the MTC, which would be Mr. Ellsworth.
Okay. Councilmember Knudsen,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Councilmember Koberstein,
Yes.
and Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
and Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. That looks like the end of our business. Should we have item 12 items likely to be placed on the next or future meeting agenda? Is that something? Okay. So we will adjourn the meeting. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank the staff for all your hard work and the council for your focus. Thank you very much.